Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Reinertz, and I'm the Community Development Director with Art South Dakota. It's great to see so many names I recognize filing into the attendee list and some new folks as well. This is the second of three webinars that we're doing in collaboration with the South Dakota Arts Council on their spring grant opportunities. This one focused on organizational project grants. And we're just really thrilled to have Kate Vandel and Patrick Baker from the Arts Council staff with us today to help walk through some of the many grant opportunities that they have. We were talking about this quite a bit with the artist grants last week. Just that there's probably a grant that fits your need somewhere in the portfolio. And so it's really great to get a chance to walk through all of these and to really dig into some of the opportunities and help answer some of your questions as you consider applying to the Arts Council grants. So before I turn it over to them, I just want to say thank you to the partners that make our whole webinar series possible, which includes this funding from the South Dakota Arts Council as well as the Bush Foundation. And then for any of you that didn't see the individual artist grant opportunities webinar last week, that recording is available on our website, artsouthdakota.org, as well as all of our webinar archives. And then for any of the organizations that are considering an Arts Challenge grant, which is the other primary category of organizational grants open right now, that session is this coming Friday, January 19th at 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain. And we'd love to see you at that one as well if you're interested. Just so you know, we'll have quite a bit of time for Q&A throughout the session, but primarily at the end. And if you could please type your questions into the Q&A function of Zoom if possible. I'll then track those, bring those to the Arts Council, and then use the chat to say hello to each other and to the panelists. And if you have any technical issues. So with that, I want to say thank you again to the Arts Council for their partnership and for helping provide so much great funding across the state. I know right now is the Arts Council is a division of the Department of Tourism, and this is the Tourism Conference Week. So I just wanted to say, thank you to Kate and Patrick for taking some time out. They said it was a kind of a ghost town on their floor right now with everyone over at the Capitol for the events for the tourism conference. But then I also wanted to say hello to everyone from Jim Spears, our executive director, who actually just arrived in Pierre and is at the Capitol as well, representing Art South Dakota for the tourism conference. And we're so grateful. I know that both Art South Dakota and the Arts Council have presented at the tourism conference, and just the continued focus on the impact that the arts bring to tourism and to the tourism industry and to our economic activity. And so many of you as arts organizations have a huge impact, and you can find out more about that impact at the Arts and Economic Prosperity study hub that we've put up, which recently completed, showing just how much the nonprofit arts really contributes to the economic vitality of all the communities across the state. So with that, I will turn it over to Patrick to say a few words, and we'll get started.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Baker, Director of the South Dakota Arts Council. Thank you to Andrew and the whole team at Arts South Dakota for hosting us for this opportunity today to let you learn a little bit more about the project grants that we offer to nonprofit organizations across the state of South Dakota. Just a little bit about the South Dakota Arts Council before we dive in. The South Dakota Arts Council is South Dakota's state arts agency, so we are a government agency. We've been in existence since the legislature brought us into existence in the year 1966. That means we are 58 years old. We have been offering grant support now for over half a century. Andrew mentioned this earlier, but we are located within what used to be called the Department of Tourism, now Travel South Dakota. So again, we are a government agency. Primarily what the South Dakota Arts Council does is provide funding to help support arts organizations like we're going to be talking to today, as well as artists, to really help support arts programs, arts projects, arts series or arts events that typically are envisioned at the local level and coordinated at the local level. And so we try to help support you and your community doing what makes sense for you to provide arts opportunities for your specific communities. And really at the end of the day, what we're here to do is to serve our constituents, to support your enthusiasm, recognize your challenges, and to work alongside you to help expand South Dakota's arts community. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to South Dakota Arts Council Grant Specialist, Kate Vandel.
Thank you, Patrick. So great to be here today with all of you. I just want to extend again our gratitude to Art South Dakota for hosting us today, and to all of you for taking time out of your day, so close, some of you over the lunch hour and so close to the lunch hour. The Arts South Dakota and South Dakota Arts Council team knows that I am a true holder of lunchtime. So we will share some important information with you today and get you on your way as efficiently as possible. We are here today to talk about our open opportunities from the South Dakota Arts Council. And I do just want to remind everyone that our applications are due by 11:59 p.m. on March 1st. And so with that high level important stuff out of the way, I'll go ahead and dig in. Again, just that reminder that applications are open online. You'll see the link to our Go Smart website here when Andrew shares out these slides, which we so appreciate him doing after this webinar. All of the links within my PowerPoint presentation will be live and active. And so you'll have access to all the locations that we talk about today, as well as email addresses for staff, etc. Before we kick off and start talking about the application, I do just want everyone to know that we recognize that an online application can be a challenge for some people. Some organizations may not have the capacity to do that. If you need help or support with an online application, we ask that you contact the South Dakota Arts Council as soon as possible, and we will do our best to accommodate whatever those needs you may have. I'm the grant specialist, so you're going to hear this probably a million times throughout our call today, but we have guidelines out there to help you, to help answer your questions on whether or not you're eligible, to help you understand what we can and cannot fund, and to help you understand what we mean when we talk about a project grant. So I'm going to direct you to start your application by reading through those guidelines. We have a section dedicated to the project grants, quick and efficient to get you through. We explain to you what we need in the application, and then we also explain to you what reviewers are looking for. We're going to talk about a few of those things today, but I do just want to draw you back to those grant guidelines to answer any of those high-level questions that you may have. Obviously, we have a staff of 4 people here at the South Dakota Arts Council. You can reach out to us and ask us anything on applications, technical support, or if you just need someone to talk through your project with, if you're just not sure that it's worthy of your time and energy to submit an application, go ahead and start with us. My contact information is here, both my direct email and my phone number. And then we provide the full staff list on a section of our website. And so that link is here and active as well. One last thing before we dig in is we do not accept late or incomplete applications. So when you look through those grant guidelines and you see things about what's required or what's eligible, make sure that you're following those instructions. If anything is missing or your application comes in after the deadline, we're not able to review that or send it off to panel for review. We do have resources posted for applicants in what we call our applicant portal. It really is a one-stop shop for everything you may be thinking, maybe considering asking, maybe looking for information about. If it's not listed on the applicant portal, please reach out to us directly and ask us. The portal link that I have here, it includes, like I said, those guidelines are front and center on that applicant portal. That's where we want you to start. But in addition to the grant guidelines, you'll find samples of the full application for all of the grants that we're offering right now. So as an organization, you're, like Andrew said at the beginning of the conversation, you're really in 2 camps. You're applying for a project grant or you're applying for general operating support through that Arts Challenge grant. Both of those guidelines are posted on the applicant portal. And then when I say full sample of the application, I mean a complete PDF copy of what that application looks like. What questions are we asking? What information are we seeking? What do you need in order to apply? And then we also are providing a Word document that will give you a space to build your narrative questions for your project grant application. That's question by question, but that you're filling in and submitting with a specific character count. And that sample includes what the character count is for each of those questions. And then that Word document is really a free and easy space for you to write your responses, check your spelling, check your grammar. You could always take that Word document and even send it to somebody else on your board or somebody that is co-writing that grant with you, and you can work sorry, I cannot talk today, collaboratively within that space to craft those answers together. Our applicant portal also includes, like I said, all of our staff information and then just good tools to help you work through that application process. Furthering along on that staff support realm, we have a few avenues for support this webinar that you guys are on, which again, we so appreciate you for joining us today. And then we host bi-weekly Q&A sessions that we call water cooler chats. Those are online Zoom calls with whatever staff is available that day of the week to be able to ask questions directly of us and have us respond in real time. We will have one not this Thursday, but next Thursday at 3 p.m. And the login information through Zoom is posted on our website. You'll find that on the applicant portal. We also have a Facebook group that we manage and man to answer questions that are as they come in. It's also an opportunity for you to just have conversations with other people that are thinking about applying for grants from us. And then, as I said, our staff contact information is listed on the applicant portal. Staff is generally available from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and that's Central Time. We'll go ahead and dig in on eligibility. I did just want to feature a few of our past grantees in this webinar as well. You can't really have an Arts Council webinar without a few photos. And so this is just an example of a community mural and that was presented through Fallout Community, Creative Community in Aberdeen. So when we talk about eligibility, we talk about as an applicant that's not meeting any of the things on this list, you're not eligible to apply for a grant from the South Dakota Arts Council. And if you proceed with an application and submit an application, we as a staff won't be able to review that application or submit it to panel. And these are things that we do cross-check when your application comes in. We vet every single applicant, we vet every single application. And so if for any reason we find that you're not checking one of these boxes, first and foremost, we'll reach out to you directly and ask you, what's going on here? I'm not finding you listed in South Dakota, or I don't see that you're a non-for-profit tax exempt agency. Can you just give me a little bit more information? And then based on those responses, we have the opportunity to decide whether or not we can send you on for panel review or whether we need to deny your application. The last thing we want to do is deny an application. So if you have questions about eligibility, reach out to us first before you start that application. Very high level things on this slide here. The types of work that we can fund as the South Dakota Arts Council. Obviously, we are first and foremost directed to fund arts programming and arts activities. So you'll see the list of what that includes at the top of this slide. And then for an organization to be eligible to apply, they need to be located in the state of South Dakota. They need to be a registered nonprofit organization, units of state or local government, or a federally recognized tribal government. And then this is an ongoing thing now with the federal government, this unique entity identifier or UEI number. This is replacing what we used to request, which was a DUNS number. And this is a federally registered 12-digit number. Again, if you have questions, there's resources on the applicant portal for what that looks like, what that process is to receive that UEI number. And again, if you have further questions, you can always reach out to staff to help you. So just digging in on a few of those definitions from the previous section, when we say South Dakota base, we mean that you are not only physically located in the state of South Dakota, the borders of our state within those 9 federally recognized reservations of the state, that large geographic swath. We're also asking that you must be registered with the South Dakota Secretary of State. And there's a way for you to go out to the South Dakota Secretary of State's office and search for your organization to just ensure that you're listed on that page and you're in good standing. That link is on the slide, as well as that nonprofit tax exempt agency. That means that you're registered with the federal government, with the IRS specifically, as a 501c3. And so there's a link here that you can go out to the IRS's website, check your status with the IRS, make sure that you're a registered 501c3 and that you're also in good standing with the IRS. And those are 2 of the high level requirements that we have as far as eligibility for grants. Since we're going down the path of no, I'm going to just continue on that path of no. We do have a few things that are restricted as far as being able to fund here at the South Dakota Arts Council. We don't do fiscal agents. So that means that if you're receiving a grant from us, you can't turn around and then re-grant that money out to any other type of organization. That grant is between you and us as the grantor. We're not able to provide funding to religious organizations that are engaging in arts projects or activities that are religious or occur during a religious service. And then we're not able to provide funding to both individuals and organizations for the same project going on. So those were who we won't grant to. And this list and onto the next slide is what we won't grant for. And what we did this year is reordered the things on the list in the order of what I see the most often. And so keep in mind that these are things that if it comes in on your budget, we're going to come back to you and say, nope, we can't provide funding for this. So we shouldn't be seeing those in your application, and we should not be seeing them in your budget. Like I said, they're in the order of the issues that we see the most often. Thankfully, the highest level one is not the one that we see the most often. It's just the one that you need to pay attention to the most. And so that is our grant period. We are talking about money for projects beginning on July 1st and I have to look at my calendar so I make sure I get the year right here, July 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. Just clicking down the list of restrictions. Again, these are not showing up on your application and these are not showing up on your budget because these are things that we cannot fund. So I don't want to see it as part of your, we'll get into what a match is, but I don't want to see it as part of your match. I don't want to see it as part of your projected expenses because it's not things that we can provide you grant money for. Cost of goods for resale or cost of goods sold. Even if they're related to your programming, we shouldn't be seeing these in your application or in your budget. Any type of recognition, whether to an institution or an individual. And this is one that gets really tricky. You can certainly host events, you can have people come in, you can do all of the things that arts programming is all about. It's about bringing people together. But what we're not able to do is pay for activities that are not necessarily arts programming, but are more like the meal or the social side of that aspect of bringing people together. And then fundraising activities or events, those are restricted by our friends at the National Endowment for the Arts. And so those are restricted by us as well. The restrictions go on. I apologize. Again, if you have questions or concerns about any of the things on either of these 2 slides, please be sure to call us and ask us questions before you start your application. We're not funding projects that are excluding any part of the public. We cannot fund any activities that you're using to generate academic credit. And then just quickly ticking through these last three, any level of emergency relief funding to individuals, construction, whether new, existing, remodeling, any of that is restricted, and then any level of endowment funding. Again, the grant guidelines provide all of this in detail, and our staff can answer any questions that you may have specific to these restrictions. Now for the fun stuff. We're through all the no's and now we're into the yes. Yes, this is what we want to see in your community. We want to see these beautiful murals like we have in Sisseton, and we want to see you doing arts projects and arts programming that's open to everybody within your community. So when we talk about project grants, we want to talk about the outcomes of project grants, and that's really providing an opportunity for the public to engage with art. That's what we see as a project grant. That's what we see as just good arts programming in general. We want to support the creation of art, arts learning at all stages, the integration of arts into your community, all of these things and more. You probably have plenty of ideas or proposals that we haven't even thought of as arts programming yet. And that's where we really want to see you submitting applications, pushing our envelope of what does arts programming look like in your community and for you. Arts project grants provide up to $5,000 or half of what your projected expenses are. So again, just ticking back to those restrictions again, this is why we're pretty particular about what shows up on that budget. You know, we have a limited amount of money that we can grant you in this category of support. And so we want to make sure that the money that you're including, the money that you're requesting is really going to pay for that arts programming. You're paying for artists to come in and do the work, for the marketing, for space rental. All of those buckets are eligible, and that's where we want the money from the South Dakota Arts Council to be supporting the work and invested in the work. Project grants require what we call a one-to-one match. So like I said, you can request up to $5,000 or 50% of your expenses. So let's say you want to host an art class, and you want to use your grant funds to pay your teaching artists to pay your teaching artists first and foremost, to pay for supplies, to market the class, and host an online registration. And the total expenses are $7,500. You can request up to $3,750 from the South Dakota Arts Council. And then you're also showing that you have $7,500 in income coming in. That does not have to mean that you've got $7,500 in registrations coming in. That could be, you know, our $3,750 from the South Dakota Arts Council, and maybe you're getting a $1,000 grant from your local bank and another $1,000 bank grant from your local grocery store, and then you've got the rest is made up in admissions costs or registration costs. So that's how that match works. You've got a one-to-one match on the expenses side, and then an overall one-to-one match expenses matched income. So what will you need for your application? We've got the full laundry list here of what's required as part of the application. And when you go into that sample application, you'll see the exact same checklist. So as you work through that sample, as you work through that application, you can say, oh, yep, got my projected outcomes, got my budget done, my income is all figured out, and I'm moving on to my narrative responses next. So you can kind of work through that like you would a grocery list or a laundry list or a to-do list, and make sure you've got all those boxes checked before you're ready to submit that application. One thing that is different this year, and we're continuing to build some resources out there for applicants to use, is we are requesting a W-9 at the time of application. Why we're doing this is to make sure that our grantees get paid quickly and efficiently. And we feel that this process of requesting the W-9 ahead of that fiscal year starting, that's always such a tricky time for us. Like I said, we have a staff of 4. We're also dealing with a small finance staff, trying to get everybody ready to go to get them paid. We've got grantees that are really excited to get that money, and we just can't get all of our ducks in a row quick enough to make sure that our grantees are paid quickly and efficiently. And so this is really our solution to that problem. If you're having a lot of issues with the W-9 or you've got questions about it, like I said, we're in the process of posting resources. And what happens is you submit your application, you get an automated message back from our grant system, and that provides you the link you need to go out and review those W-9 documents, submit your W-9 for your organization, and fully check the box. Like, yep, my application's in, my W-9 is in, I'm totally done with this. Now I just have to sit and wait and find out if I got money or not. We're also requesting, these are just requests. This is the first year that we've had a request for this brief accessibility checklist. South Dakota was wonderful enough to host a webinar with us last June about this brief accessibility checklist. It really is our opportunity to start and continue that conversation about what access looks like in the arts community and how important it is that everyone can get access to the art that you're offering within that community. And then as far as the letters of support, this again is just a request. If you have partners within your community, if you have artists within your community that you're working alongside, and you want to provide letters of support, letters of endorsement of the work that you plan to do, these can be really powerful as part of the review process. And this is just an opportunity for you to share what that impact looks like across your community and how important it is to these partners that you've got working alongside you. As far as the grant review goes, we work through a panel process. Before applications go to panel, like I mentioned earlier, we as staff, we vet every single application that comes in. Really there, we're looking for issues with eligibility that could be, like I said earlier, 501 status, 501c3 status, your South Dakota Secretary of State status, maybe your address is a little off and I have questions. We're looking for eligibility things when we vet your application. We're not reading your full application. We're not reviewing all of your materials. I'm really just looking at all of the things that are required with the application are in. You've answered all the questions. You're providing all the information. If you're passing that test, you're moved on to a panel review. And panels consist of both in-state and out-of-state panelists. These are arts professionals and are facilitated by board and staff members. And we limit our service on panels to 2 years. So it's unlikely that you'll see the same panelists 2 years in a row. And I do just want to remind everyone here that if your application is late or incomplete, it won't move on to the next step. It won't be reviewed by panel. We do offer a larger review of your application. So like I said, we vet them all for eligibility. And then our draft review process is really us taking a good chunk of time with your application, reading through your questions, reviewing all of the information that you're providing, and then providing constructive feedback back to you as far as things that you may need to change or maybe something that you've missed as part of your narrative question or within your budget. We're not reviewing your application for grammar or spelling. And we do try to get that feedback to you 2 weeks ahead of the application deadline so that you can then make those changes, turn around and submit your application when you're good and ready. That review deadline is February 13th at 11:59 p.m. I see that I missed a slide, but I built this. So I just want to go into my personal notes and just hit on a few things that are highlights. So just a couple of things to keep in mind with the application. I'll try to remember to put this slide back in before Andrew sends it out. We're providing you with some some instructions, some guidelines, and some contact information. So we're asking that you follow the instructions that we provide, you read the guidelines, and you reach out to staff if you have any questions about anything that is unclear. Keep in mind that funding is competitive. Again, you want to make sure that you're answering all those questions, you're providing all that information. You're really thinking long and hard about, why am I doing this work? Who am I serving with this work? And why is it important for my community? Write those applications with that review criteria in mind. I didn't get into that because all of that is detailed pretty extensively in our grant guidelines, as well as within the application itself. So go through, review those review the review criteria, get an understanding of what panelists are looking for, and then craft your materials based on that. Make sure you're being clear and concise, be to the point and consistent with your information. Do not assume that anyone just automatically knows you or knows the work you do. Keep in mind, some of these panelists are from out of state. And then above all else, when you get done with your application, read it. Make sure that it makes sense, that your information flows throughout that application, that you're not talking about Z when you're really focused on A. Everything lines up and just flows throughout those questions and that narrative, and is connected throughout the application. There is a deliberate flow to the process. I'm a very process-oriented person, and so I try to build in a little bit of flow to that process. Makes it easier for you as the applicant to respond and submit that application, and then our reviewers to read everything through as well. So those are just some high-level tips. Again, just a reminder, if you have questions, concerns, just thoughts on the process as a whole. If there's something that you just don't really like, let us know, because I don't know unless you're telling me that this, hey, you're asking for this, but it really doesn't make sense. One last opportunity that I will highlight is we do have an open call for panelists right now. We're requesting that you submit your request to be a panelist by the 31st of January, the last day in January. And that link on the slide is active. So that will take you directly out. You'll get a little bit more information about what service on a panel means. You'll see the form that we have out there for you to be able to complete and submit. And that is all I have.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Kate. A lot of great information. We have some good follow-up questions. But just wanted to first of all say, as you mentioned the panelists, one other webinar that I'll send out to everyone that we have a great recording of was a panel of panelists, a session we had about a year ago where we had folks who have been panelists for the South Dakota Arts Council, the Nebraska Arts Council, as well as the National Endowment for the Arts. But also all of the panelists had written grants to the Arts Council as well. So it's kind of a good perspective of what they found as panelists would be really helpful of, having really high quality work samples, or as Kate mentioned, not assuming that someone knows your work because there are out of state panelists reviewing your work and they might not know what you do. So I just wanted to mention that. And then also I'll send out a link to the accessibility series that we did over the summer, in particular the session covering the new accessibility checklist from the Arts Council. So a couple of questions that have come in. First of all, as you're going over the eligibility, are these grant opportunities available? Are there any grant opportunities available for 501c4s, or are these only 501c3s that these are available for?
I can take that one because it's easy. I'll leave the hard ones for Kate. Unfortunately, 501c4s are not eligible for our grant support, just by way of a little bit of explanation there. The IRS is making that 501c fill in the blank determination on what type of nonprofit organization your organization will be. And so, of course, we leave that to the IRS. That determination is up to them. However, the South Dakota Arts Council, we receive our federal funding from the National Endowment for the Arts through what is called a state partnership agreement. That state partnership agreement brings with it a host of terms and conditions. And then those terms and conditions must pass through to our sub-awardees, which are essentially all of the people on this call today, or people who apply for grant funding from us. So since the NEA has set up a very specific 501c3 only when it comes to nonprofit designations from the IRS, we have to follow through with that. And our matching funds then, and as well as that federal money, can only provide grant support to 501c3s. So a pretty lengthy explanation for a very short answer, but unfortunately, no, it needs to be a 501c3.
Great. Kind of following up with that, then a good next question is comes from an organization that they're just about to apply for their nonprofit status, but they probably won't be approved by the March application deadline. Is there any leeway in that time factor? And if so, is there any documentation they can provide alongside their application to help with that?
Yeah, this one, I'll take it. Yes, please go ahead and submit your application. You can always, I believe it's a letter of intent from the IRS that comes out when that process is underway. As long as you have your 501c3 status by the time we're ready to award grants, you're in great shape. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is we would need some level of identification, whether it's an email from the I've gotten a lot of different methods of, hey, we're in process. Here's whatever. So I just need something, whatever, from the IRS, just showing that that process is underway and you're moving towards that status. Unfortunately, if that status doesn't come through prior to when we award grants, which tends to be, kind of mid-June when those awards are ready to go out, we would have to put you on pause probably until we're into the next fiscal year. But we do have other ongoing opportunities that may be viable options for you if it, for whatever reason, the timing doesn't work out. We can figure that out.
Great, thank you. And I would just say too, to the person asking that question, please reach out to me at andrew@artsouthdakota.org if you have any questions regarding your application. We don't yet have a guide, but we have some resources available for starting a nonprofit, an arts nonprofit, and also have some connections to the relatively newly formed South Dakota Nonprofit Network, and they have some resources available as well. Great. So a couple of other, trying to kind of organize these together. So first, some kind of activity eligibility questions. If an activity or project is in a detention center, so it's only open to a select group in that regard, it's not quote unquote public, but not open to the entire community, is that eligible for an organizational project grant?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in here. We say open to the public, but we recognize some of the work that we are supporting is being done in the school. That's open to the public to a degree, but not like wide open, doors open, everybody just walk in. As long as you're clear in who you're serving with the work that you're doing, and you have some opportunity for people within the community that you are serving to be involved in that project and that work, I would see that yes is eligible. When we say excluding, we mean that you have to have a these are so few and far between anymore, but you'd have to have a season ticket to participate in any of the programming that's going on, or you would have to have some level of secret access to get in, or it's taking place during a private event. All of those things would be examples of where the public just is not available to participate. So hopefully that's clear.
I will just add to that. Everything that Kate said is that's a great answer, Kate. That said, we would like to see a public component. Let's just say I'm making this up, but we have had projects in the past, for instance, that do involve the penitentiary or detention center type of setting. And let's just say that you were doing residency work in a detention facility and you were providing some arts instruction. I think panelists would probably look favorably upon including a public component to that project, where maybe an art show at the end of a series of sequential learning or something that would be open to the public, or at least open to the families, let's say, of those who are in the detention facility or the beneficiaries of that arts instruction. So just a little more to add to that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's very helpful. So I'm going to quick jump over to some matching questions and some budgeting questions, and then come back to some other eligible project questions. Can in-kind costs be used for the one-to-one match, or does it have to be cash?
So we work in cash, so no in kind.
Great. And then is there any limit? There's a question here on if meals for either artists or meals and then artist or participant hospitality, can those be used as expense matches?
I'm going to go out on a limb and then let Kate fix anything I say wrong. I just only want to address that this is a very confusing area, and I just want to acknowledge that. I've been here for 8 years in this position. Kate's been here nearly as long. And that still becomes a difficult question we wish it were a little bit more black and white. But I think the good rule of thumb to address this question, at least to start with, and then Kate can maybe provide some additional information, but is really about fundraising. So what the National Endowment for the Arts does not want to see their federal funds, and therefore our state matching funds, so all of our grant dollars, they don't want to see that money going towards direct support of fundraising. So that would be like if you had some type of gala event or whatever, where the primary purpose was to raise funds. That's where they really, and then food in general. For instance, this can become a sticky area for like a dinner theater, a nonprofit organization. They may provide dinner theater. Well, unfortunately, we cannot, our grant funds cannot support that food. However, our grant funds can be used to reimburse reasonable costs associated with putting on an arts project, in particular with, let's say, artists that you're bringing to your community to help carry out that project. Things like reimbursement for meals, for lodging. Certainly, we always encourage paying the artist, for their time and their work with actual cash. But again, meals, per diem, and mileage are reasonable items to include, and our funds can be used for that.
Great. This wasn't part of that question, but this leads me to a kind of a corresponding question of if, even if your funds weren't used for that, could money spent on meals raised from other dollars be used as the matching funds? So if you have $1,000 project grant, you have to have $1,000 of additional revenue to match it. Could your funding not directly pay for the meals, but could money spent on meals be that one-to-one match?
I'm going to try to answer this as directly and delicately as I can. So I'm bringing Andrew. If you don't know Andrew, he's an amazing musician. And so I'm bringing Andrew in. He's going to play bass while Patrick Baker, who is an amazing singer, is singing. So I've got Andrew coming in from out of town, and I'm able to cover Andrew's per diem costs as far as lodging, mileage, and other transportation. But I also have a grant from my local bank to pay for Andrew to have lunch in a community lunch setting. So that is a direct income coming in from a community funder. And so that can count as my income, but I don't want to see that expense listed on your expenses budget. Does that make sense, Andrew? Am I answering your question? So if you're getting funding from an outside source to pay for that, you can use funding outside of our funding to pay for whatever it is you want to pay for. But if Andrew's lunch is costing $50 for him to have that lunch, when I look at your budget, I should really only see those lodging and expenses costs that are directly attributed to his travel and stay while he's there. This outside lunch that is being paid for by the bank, I don't necessarily want to see it on your expense budget. And if it's in your income budget, yes, it's certain, and it's a cash income, it can certainly go towards your match. And I mean, if you're getting a grant from the bank, I don't care what you spend it on. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that definitely helps. And I would just say a lot of those questions are probably ones that are um, those gray areas are probably good ones to reach out to the Arts Council to confirm before either your application budget or especially your, halfway through or when you're submitting your evaluation, just to confirm all of that. Because I know that is the big gray area, and largely because of the big gray area that the Arts Council has been put in as well with that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I would just add that we do have language within the guidelines that kind of provides a little bit of direction on what those travel costs look like. We use the state has a per diem amount, and that's the amount that we use when we talk about lodging, when we talk about food, when we talk about travel. And so you'll also see in the expenses budget that section of mileage, we're indicating that that is really for project work based per diem. So this is, an individual coming to stay within your community, do arts programming or arts work. That would all be eligible under those mileage expenses. It's when we get into those, we're bringing together a group of people for coffee, and then we're going to move over to the arts center for the art show. We're not able to pay for the social time and for the coffee ahead of time, unfortunately. But if there's any level of transportation costs taking you from the coffee spot to the art spot, that would certainly be an eligible expense. It does get really tricky.
And so once again, as Andrew said, we're here as staff, Kate and the rest of the South Dakota Arts Council staff to answer questions like that. But I very quickly want to plug again what Kate offers, the draft review that she mentioned on the front end of the call. So this would be, like the poster child of what you might run by Kate or get out of a draft review if you get your application in by that draft review deadline, because Kate's going to look through your budget, and if she sees anything that shouldn't be there, she's going to reach out to you and let you know.
The other thing I'll mention from personal experience as well with the Arts Council is they also provide really fantastic follow-up to the panel comments. So whether your grant was accepted or not, even if your grant was accepted, it's been really helpful for me writing grants to the Arts Council to ask the Arts Council for the panel comments, because oftentimes even if your grant was approved, someone will say like, well, I was a little confused by this, or I didn't quite understand why this was referenced, and can really help you kind of write even better grants the next time around. And especially from those panelists, as we mentioned, who are often out of state or don't have that context, you can definitely get some good tips and tricks there. Great. Well, a couple of other kind of project-based questions here before we get to the hour wrap. One is if they have a matching grant coming in, so the matching revenue, does that have to be received during that same period of performance? So the July 1st, 2024 to June 30, 2025, or is it they have to have received that money in that time period, or could it be cash that they received that grant earlier in the year and then they have it cash in bank, or how does that work?
We provide in the budget, and Kate's probably going to want to jump in and provide a little bit more context to this, but we do provide a section of your budget that is called applicant cash. And really what that means is that's just money that the applicant is putting forward. If you don't see it in some other line item of your budget that's already spelled out, like corporate support or government support, and then we ask you, is that federal, is that county, is that city, that type of thing. But anyway, so we do have something in there called applicant cash. We don't ask you when you receive that money. That's really not important. What's important is funding activities that take place between July 1 of 2024 and June 30 of 2025. So it's more about the activity it's supporting than it is when you receive the money.
Great. Thank you. That's very helpful. Second question from that same person. So if they have identified some of the artists that will be participating in a particular project they're applying for, and they will submit those bios, but there may be other artists that they're either still trying to contract or that might be added to the project later and otherwise identified after they submit. How do you recommend including that information in their application?
Yeah, I think I would do my best just to identify the type of artist. And when I say type, I mean more like the level of quality of artists that you're bringing in and less in terms of like what they'll be doing. The artist bios are really coming down, they're really being kind of evaluated and reviewed as part of that artistic excellence side of it. And so what panelists are looking for is the type of work that they may be doing, the type of artist that they may be, the quality of work that you're looking for across all the artists that you're bringing in. That's more important than the detailed specifics on each of those individual people. So I would think just providing the information on the artists that you know are coming in, and hey, I'm bringing in Patrick Baker and Andrew Reinert. And if that's the bar that you're setting, I know probably the level that you're bringing in for the rest of the artists that will be coming in. So hopefully that's helpful. Just that high level information on those that haven't yet been identified, but just clearly identifying the quality of work of the artists that you do know have committed to the project.
Great, yeah. I've also seen in some other places the vetting process that you might use can be helpful. Like if you have a rubric as a board, or even just who's going to vet, if you're saying, well, we don't know yet, but our board is looking at this type of an artist. A committee of 5 from the board will be looking at the quality of their work and making the determination. Just so that the folks who are on the panel know that there's a process, and it's not just going to be walking down the street grabbing the first person you see that has a paintbrush in their hands, and so that helps. Great. Um, a great question that just came in that's along the same lines. So for the artist being brought in, does the participating artist have to be a South Dakota artist, or can they be from out of state if the organization applying for the grant is a South Dakota organization?
That is a good question. We're not picky about where your artists are coming from, but the organization applying has to be in South Dakota.
Great. So here's one question that came in through the chat. Oh, when I just see it popped into the Q&A as well. So this is a question about the same organization or artist being able to apply for the same work. So this is if a local arts council applies for a grant for activities that take place at a local arts venue, does that prevent that venue from applying for different grants for other activities?
No,
Great.
no, not at all.
It just would be if it was, say, an art show, both the Arts Council and the venue couldn't apply for grant funding for that particular art show.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. And then similarly, can an individual artist that either works for the venue or the Arts Council still be allowed to apply for individual artist grants? I assume it would be similar where it just can't be for the same project.
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
great.
We're not picky about who's applying. We just don't want to see multiple applications for the same work coming in.
Great. Perfect. Well, then
it's probably also important to note that you can only apply for one project grant at a time. So, you know what I mean? So in other words, if there's another grant program we have available that might affect you, and it's not, again, crossing funds for 2 different grants to pay for the same work, but important to know, only one project grant at a time.
Great.
Yeah, and I would add if the individual applying is, let's say that individual is the venue owner and that venue is not a 501c3, so they would essentially be applying for an artist project grant. That would be the only artist grant that we could see come in from that individual. So if I'm the venue owner and I'm also considering applying for one of the artist grants, let's say I'm gonna apply for an artist career development grant, I would have to choose between an artist project grant as an individual or one of the other artist grants. That artist project grant is in the same lane as those artist grants. So that would be one thing that would prohibit multiple applications as well.
Great. Well, we're coming up on the hour, and that was a great, really great session. A lot of helpful information. As always, please reach out to any of us. The last thing I might just ask is just one question that came in is just if there are some good examples of past project grant successful past projects, and just where you might direct folks to look for some of that information.
Well, one thing I'll just offer is, after 8 years of viewing panels doing their work, it's important to note that the paid South Dakota Arts Council staff, we are not serving on these panels, we're administering the panels. So about the time I can predict how a panel is going to break, it changes because they're made up of human beings, of course. That said, I just want to say in general that panels seem to really respond very proactive. They respond well to projects that have been taken the community into account when you're planning it. So it's let's say it's a project that's not just developed in a vacuum. And so if there's in other words, if there's a key to a success for a project grant, I'd say it's actually, if it's going to benefit the community, then involving some of that community in helping with the planning. That said, I would also recommend, and I think I did throw into the chat, hopefully it was to the whole group, but you can go to our website, which is artscouncil.sd.gov. And if you click on the About Us link at the top, there we do post our grant recipients over the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years, as well as our annual reports to the legislature, which includes all of the grants that we do. So you can really see a long list going back 4 to 5 years just by visiting the website of projects that were successfully, received funding.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you to Kate and Patrick for taking the time today, especially during such a busy week for everyone at Tourism. But also just thank you so much to all of you on the webinar. It's just seeing all these names from all around the state. It's just always a good reminder during these cold, frigid January days where we're feeling cooped up and feeling like, is anything happening anywhere? Just knowing that there's so much great creative work happening all around the state is just really, really warming on these frigid January days. So we'll definitely be sending these slides out as well as the recording of this session. You'll find some other information at artsouthdakota.org, including the webinars of the archives of past webinars. And please reach out to me anytime, or any of us at Art South Dakota, with ideas for webinars or any other way we could be of service as you do your fantastic work all around the state. So with that, I'll wish you all a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and thank you all again.
Thank you, Andrew, and Art South Dakota, and everybody for being with us today.